Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Let's Play Warframe. I'm your host of the most, as always, Francois878, and today we'll be doing my very late review of the Dark Split Sword, and I'll also be offering some build suggestions later on in the video. And the reason that it's late is because I couldn't bring myself to even do a review for this weapon because I was so disappointed. The Dark Split Sword is supposed to have a gimmick where basically it starts off as a regular sword, and then when you hit a button it will change into a dual sword, and that will change the mechanics of the weapons, it'll change the combos, it'll be a lot of fun. Problem is, guys, is that when DE released the Dark Split Sword, the gimmick wasn't there. The Dark Split Sword will take heavy sword stances and dual sword stances, but there's no way in the middle of a level to switch from the heavy sword stance, which you're seeing here, to the dual sword stance. The gimmick is non-existent. And essentially, because dual sword mod stances and heavy sword mod stances don't have the same polarity, if you want a Dark Split Sword that has a heavy mod stance, heavy sword stance, and a Dark Split Sword that has a dual sword stance, you actually have to either form the one Dark Split Sword you have multiple times so that you can eat the negative mod capacity that you'll have by putting the incorrect mod polarity in the stance slot, or you just have to build two Dark Split Swords and a form of them to fit the appropriate stance that you want. And that's the route that I went with. DE was kind enough to supply me one to do a video on, and so I basically just went and bought another one because it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, and the fact that the Dark Split Sword's initial stance polarity isn't even for a good stance is awful. This is my build suggestion for the heavy sword. Obviously, Temple Royale in there. It's an excellent mod. I also built it specifically for status chance. I believe over 60% status chance with these builds. I have Lasting Sting on there because honestly this weapon's damage is garbage. When you have the heavy sword stance in, the damage is the lowest of any heavy weapon in the entire game. It has the lowest. It does have the highest attack speed, though, tied with the Galantine, so that's something. But the crit chance and the status chance are subpar, and when you take it into the dual sword stance, it actually loses crit chance, status chance, and base damage. So it's just I just don't understand it. I don't get it. Dual swords are supposed to be fast, and they're supposed to be, the majority of dual sword weapons in this game have pretty respectable crit chances. I don't know why they chose to nerf the crit chance for the Dark Split Sword dual stance version, as well as not increase the attack speed at all. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's just, I wish this was more fun to use, but it's just not. But getting back to the build, the point of this weapon is to basically proc status effects and have those status effects last as long as humanly possible. I have primed reach on there because the reach for the dual sword stance, and the heavy sword stance both seem pretty short. And so I was also figuring, you know, the more enemies that I could potentially hit in a group, the more chances I can inflict status effects, the better. The one somewhat good thing about this sword is that it does deal radiation damage by default, which is a pretty solid status effect, and it's excellent. It's an excellent damage type against Grineer, and even if you're fighting, you know, Corpus or Infested, being able to proc radiation and have a bunch of confused enemies running around attacking each other is always a good thing. It's just not a fun weapon to use. That's the long and the short of it, unfortunately. I wish it was. DE has said that once they figure out how to make the dual split sword change stance in the middle of the level, they will get that in the game. But as of right now, it's a gimmick weapon without the gimmick, I'll be honest with you guys. I like the idea behind the dark split sword. I think having the option to have multiple different types of stances on a single weapon is a great idea. This particular gimmick doesn't work right now, and I just don't think it should have even been released yet. Thank you guys very much for coming. I appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more Warframe content coming very soon. I've been your host with the most, as always, Francois878, signing off.